Hey, you're watching GearWire.com. I'm Owen and I'm here with Jason Caddell from the Dismemberment Plan. How's it going?
Good. How are you, Owen?
I'm doing well, actually.
Good.
Yeah.
Man.
It's hot, but it's not too hot. You know?
Right. Yeah, not yet.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the live album that you guys just released.
Sure.
It is released now, right? So.
Yeah, I believe so. Live in Japan.
Yeah, right on.
Yep.
So how'd that come about? Like, it's the first live album you guys put out, is that correct?
Yeah, it is. And we kind of like our Japanese handlers, the management company that brings us to Japan in particular, sort of arranged the whole thing and did the recording, and we didn't really have much to do with it, frankly, other than approving the mixes and approving the release. Yeah.
So it was kind of like they had the idea to do it. They were like, let's do a live album, or is this something you guys had always wanted to do?
Oh, I think the idea came mostly from them. I mean, we've talked about doing live stuff before, and actually the two 930 Club shows that we performed in Washington at the beginning of the year, I produced a full 5-camera HD shoot and 24-track audio record of both of those shows. So hopefully at some point that stuff is going to get edited and mixed, and we hope we'll see the light of day, but we've got kind of some other stuff in the pipeline at this point that takes precedence, so yeah.
So how did you, what do you use to capture audio at live shows like that?
I used my Cubase rig for the stuff at the 930 Club. I'm not sure what the Japanese guys used. I think that it was probably Pro Tools. But my record was Cubase 5, and I've got some Aurora converters. And the Auroras that I have are 16 channels, and right before that weekend I was like, you know what, it would be really helpful to have 8 more channels. And so I went out and got another card and 8 more channels of PreSonus to like put the DI stuff and the non-important stuff in. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so have 24
How do you find that like PreSonus stuff compares to the like premium stuff?
I think for consumer level stuff, they make really solid gear. I mean, obviously the Auroras are a different category, and those things are unimpeachable. I mean, to my ears, are some of the best converters out there, and I love them. And you know, those work in concert with an RME AES32 card, so the RME is kind of the back end to those converters, and that system has been flawless for me and just sounds terrific.
So have you been always a Cubase user?
Yeah, like 1,000 years ago, the Dismemberment Plan started using Cubase. I think honestly we just found a crack of it somewhere, and that's what we mucked around with, and we're talking like 15 years ago. And that's what I sort of got my my start with. I've got good friends that Chad Clark, who's produced a couple Dismemberment Plan records, is a pretty solid performer user. And there's some other people too that kind of operated just fine outside the Pro Tools world, and that was a kind of an influence on my thinking about whether or not to go Pro Tools. And I always thought that, frankly, the way DigiDesign ran things was, you know, kind of lame, frankly. But I mean, you know.
Care to elaborate on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to. You essentially, and in my mind, this really becomes true within about the past 5 or 6 years. You're just paying way more than you need to for technology that is unlocked and free on the open market. Like the cost-benefit analysis doesn't make any sense whatsoever, specifically for someone like me who's an independent operator and my livelihood does not depend on making records. So the caveat is, if your livelihood depends on making records and you're running an ongoing studio, and mix portability and interoperability between systems is very important for your bread and butter, absolutely I can see it. Then that's where the premium for the digi stuff becomes more of a business choice, and that makes all the sense in the world.
Because you have to port it to other studios.
Absolutely, and not only that, you also have the kind of psychological aspect of, like, if you don't have Pro Tools, you're essentially not, you're losing out on clients that are just going to be like looking at the gear list going, where's the HD rig? And then if they see Nuendo, they're just going to be like, I don't know what that is, next studio, kind of thing.
So you're making your living right now doing like sort of large scale AV stuff?
Yeah, basically large scale corporate and political events.
So the fact that Pro Tools, like with Pro Tools 9, kind of went, I guess, non-proprietary with their hardware, does that change your sort of opinion about it at all? Or?
Not really. I mean, I'm so, like, the stuff that I do doesn't depend on any of those things that I mentioned. Like, it doesn't really depend heavily on portability. Like, I operate, as my friend Joel Hamilton likes to say about us people that aren't in the Pro Tools world, on my own little island out in the middle of the sea. And I totally get what he means. Like, he has a point. But I love my little island. It's a beautiful place. It's very quiet, lots of birds, trees, you know. He's in the big city, and that's good for him.
I've always been really intrigued in the sort of fidelity, not necessarily fidelity, but the sort of tonal difference in the last two Dismemberment Plan albums, in Emergency Eye and in The Change. And I'm wondering, like, you know, it's like the same band, you know, ostensibly playing like the same instruments, and what accounts for that sort of tonal difference? Is that something that's like planned out, or like in what point of the production process does that become the character of an album, if that makes sense?
Sure, it makes sense. I mean, at totally the beginning, we recorded at two completely different studios. And you're talking about the difference between Water Music and Hoboken, where we recorded Emergency and I, where at the time he had two Studer 827s gang together for 48 tracks of, like, essentially impeccable tape machines and a Trident console that was really well maintained and taken care of, and tons of top flight gear. We recorded Change at the, in my estimation anyway, more legendary Inner Ear Studios in Arlington, with which we've had a long relationship. And all of my audio beginnings and kind of education over the years, maybe not all, but tons of it have come from Don and Inner Ear. I mean, that place is, it just has a huge part in the history of particularly punk rock music in the United States. But Don's got different gear than Water. Like, he's got a 24-track Atari tape machine and an Amec Angela console. Like, these are different equipment choices that Don has made, which totally reflect his philosophy. And his philosophy as a studio owner is very interesting. Like, he is not, I think a lot of guys are like, I need to have the Neumanns, I need to have the Neve, I need to have the 1176 and the LA2 in order to get people in the door, and Don has never, ever, ever bought into any of that at all. And so as a result, he's built a studio and built a sonic legacy more like a painter. More like, what the hell does this box do? Like, and what do we do? If we do this other thing, what does it do? And like, okay, this mixer's got 48 channels, like this is big enough to match this tape machine, and like kind of it's very organic and artistic process, and less kind of keep up with the Joneses, I think.
Yeah, more listening than like branding.
Way, and even, I mean, listening is an artistic enterprise, not as an analytical enterprise, and it's a different thing. Like, listen to the Antelope records of the 2000s that Don did and mixed, and you get, like, nothing else sounds like that. Like, you can feel however you want about it, but like, that man has a sonic imprint, and it's freaking awesome.